I love me some Tessa Thompson, folks, and I couldn't wait to check out her new film, and it was really good. More or less the messages that came out of this film. So I'm very excited to jump into the review of the new film, Passing. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel today for another review. And today we're going to be reviewing the film Passing, which is going to be dropping on Netflix November 10th. Now, this film has made its world premiere on the film festival circuit, and I've heard mixed reviews about it, but nonetheless, I may be a little bit biased. I really enjoyed this. One, because I love the cast. A couple of my favorites are in this. Tessa Thompson, as I named. Ruth Negga is one that I've been a fan of for a long time. And then Alexander Skarsgård, who is, I mean, I've been a fan of his since True Blood. So, like, you know, right there, I'm like, okay, let's see what they can do here. And then also, you know, this film is shot in noir, which I always say is a very bold statement to make when you film in black and white. And I think this one was perfectly fitting considering what the subject matter and the plot is with this one. That's because you had these two black women, Tessa Thompson, who plays Irene, and Ruth Negga, who plays Clare, who could pass as white, but they choose to live on the opposite side of color, and this is taking place in the 1920s in New York. So Ruth's character, Clare, she, at 18, she got married to a white man, she left Chicago and went to New York, and since then, she has identified as white. And her husband, who is John, who's played by Alexander, he's never seen a black person. He's never like really been, well, he's seen a black person, but he's never really been acquainted or met one or, you know, interacted with one. So he wouldn't know if one was right under his nose the entire time. But yeah, she passes off as white. She grew up sort of in a white environment. So it was an easy transition for her, where she talks about the benefits of it. You know, she talks about, you know, the wealth and the privilege and, you know, all those sorts of different things. Meanwhile, Irene, Tessa Thompson's character, is married with two kids to Brian, who's played by André Holland, who she says she has everything that she wants. She wouldn't change a thing. And I think the differences here is that, you know, Irene is fully immersed into the black culture, the New York culture in this time. So she really, you know, fully embraces that. And there's a lot to embrace, a lot of reasons to be proud to be black, regardless of the struggle or what society want to oppress at the time in regards to the black culture, you know. And while being black is and has always been a struggle and a challenge, she is fully on board with that. Well, on the other end here, Claire seems to be living her privileged life, but she's also sort of interested in this black culture because now, number one, she gets to see a friend of hers that she hasn't seen in a long time, but two, her stepping into the black culture in this capacity is giving her a vast amount of attention that she have maybe never had. She's always been attached to her husband since 18. So now that she's able to kind of step outside of that, outside of her home and outside of him, and now seeing what this culture is, she's loving it. And somebody else is loving it too. Yeah. Irene's husband, who basically now is obsessed with this shiny new toy, and this is causing all sorts of conflict and turmoil within the house here. And you know, it's difficult now because now you're seeing Irene character, or Tessa Thompson's character Irene, you know, going through a ton of conflict. Her friend, who is basically trespassing in her home, her husband, who is being very shady towards her. She's seeing what colorism is on full display and how that could be very problematic for her family, and everything that she thought was once everything that she ever needed. And also she sees the dangerism in colorism. So there's a lot really to unfold here. So folks, before I go any further, I am definitely going to go into full-blown spoilers about the ending here, because there's a lot to really unpack with the ending. Now, the first thing I got to say is about this film. I like this film because it had good messages in regards to colorism, in regards to oppression and black people, and actually seeing both sides of colorism I thought was really interesting. Learning new terminology, obviously passing, which is basically passing as white. Something, these terms has been around for years and a lot of people still aren't familiar with them. So like I like the idea of the learnings and the teachings and the vocabulary that's going on here. I think that the film really makes you think. I think the film draws a lot of empathy for the characters. The performances were really good. I laughed, I had chuckled, so the dialogue was good, and overall I thought that Tessa really being your star here alongside of Ruth, I thought they worked really well together. I mean, the energy that they had between one another really it almost kind of make this felt like a mystery thriller to an extent, because you really didn't know what was going to happen next, and there was so much unpredictability in regards to where one's mental may be. It took you on its own adventure along with that. And because it was black and white, I thought the cinematography was fantastic. It was in this 1:1, 1:1 ratio, square ratio, but really zoomed in on some really good definitions in regards to like the snow falling and the contrast here. Like I thought it did really well. And then the biggest thing is this era here, the piano keys stroking, the good old jazz, the music, the score was fantastic. I love this era. I love the styling, the fashion of this era. So like overall, there's a lot of reasons why I just like this film because of just the appearances alone. But like I said, there's some good messages here that comes from out of this film. And I think, the important thing is about a couple of things, raising your kids to the truth, talking about colorism, talking about black oppression, talking about all these societal things that are still pretty relevant right now. And although this film is taking place in the 1920s, a lot of this stuff is very, very much relevant right now, especially colorism. And when I say colorism, that's not just in terms of white people looking at black people, but this is also an internal issue amongst the black community of blacks on blacks with colorism, and that's what you see on display here. And that's why the black and white works, because it sort of takes the color pigment out of it, so that essentially all you see is black and white, and you still can draw levels of colorism from it because that's what you choose to want to see. And that's what's interesting about how they done this, But let's talk about the ending here. Now, again, full-blown spoilers. They're at this party, and right now, Irene is reading the room. She's not getting no attention. Her husband isn't looking at her at all. Her husband is just all up Claire's butt. Like, that's all he's paying attention to. Meanwhile, Claire's getting attention from everybody. And there's been hints about what potentially could have happened at the end throughout this film. I mean, Irene asked Claire, said, hey, if your husband ever catches you, what would you do? And like, when you draw suspicion with questions like that, you start to think like, well, where's their mindset with this? Because Claire said, if he does, then I will move here with you all. And that's not good, considering that there seems to be a temptation amongst her and her husband. And who knows if they're just being friendly or if he's flirting. I mean, it's a very dangerous ride. Either way, it is making Irene very uncomfortable. And that means that she wants no parts of this lady being in her house with her husband acting the way he is, And there's conflict between the two of them, and that's very, very evident. And so, like I said, he's kind of gaga over the new shiny toy here in Claire. So her husband shows up at the party, and in the blink of an eye, Claire falls out the window to her death. And it happens so fast, no one really knows what happens. But by how the film is shot, we see that it's very clear that Irene pushed her. And whether it was by mistake or on purpose, well, that's for you to determine here. And, it's a lot to make here, because when the police show up, Claire, who's dead, identifies as white. She is known as white. Her husband isn't saying anything. So we don't know if the cops is perceiving her to be a black or white person. But when they start to try to investigate what happened here, they ask a lot of questions. They want to know, was she pushed or did she fall by accident here? And first off, the first thing is that what's really interesting here is that Irene's husband says that she was pushed by her husband. And that could mean a couple of different things. That could mean, one, that's just how he wanted to see things. He could have been protecting his wife, or he could have had hatred towards the husband who showed up at the party, basically, and he's defended her. The husband defended her a couple of times already in the previous scene. So, and when I say the husband, I'm talking about Brian here. Irene's husband has defended Claire in a couple of different scenes. So this is right up his alley to say, like, yeah, I'm just going to defend her again. So who knows what that may have been. But ultimately, when it came to Irene sitting here saying that no, she fell by accident, she could have easily pinned it on Claire's husband, who she has not liked the entire film, who has clearly been a bigot towards her, and she clearly doesn't like Claire because of everything that's happening. But she did so, and by saying that she fell by accident, this sort of essentially gets her to wash her hands with that, and she gets her husband back. But also she has to read the room, because it's not a good look if she blames a white guy for killing a white person. Or is she being identified as black? Or is she being identified as white? We don't know. So it's like a big risk in what she does, because the cops who are white aren't going to say, oh yeah, we're going to believe you over him. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting that, the decisions that are made here, because you just really don't know. But ultimately, we know at the end that the husband, Brian, whispers to Irene and says, I love you, which is very important that you watch this film with the captions, because there are bits of dialogue that are really low to hear, and you can read even though you may not be able to hear it. And that's what's really important, because at the end, he said that he loved her, and whether he is truthful to that or not, because he's been, flirting around this entire movie, she does get what she wants, and she's happy about that. Is she happy because the problem's gone? Is she happy because her friend has died? Is she happy because she's not a suspect? You don't know. There's so much to make with this ending here, and that's why I thought it was really cool that they left it really open-ended for your interpretation. But like I said, this was an interesting film, and although the death was ruled as a death by misadventure, who knows what will really happen after this, and that's what's interesting as well too. But overall, the passing was I thought it was a good film, good performances, good cinematography. I love the music, I love the fashion, I love the messages being told. And overall, I like a film that just makes you think, like a thriller, a mystery thriller. And I like that this ended in a way that leaves it so wide open that, I'm here trying to tell you what my theories are, and hopefully you got some too. So folks, jump in the comments. Let me know your thoughts about this film. And as always, stay tuned for more reviews very soon.